Greetings. Hope you're doing well. It's funny because most of the time I want to go live and address a particular topic or share a quote. That's where I have comments and I end up making more videos in French. But now, as you can see in the title, it's a video in English. So, my English speaking people, if you want to holler, you are definitely free. Okay. So, we're going to talk about the originals of the Bible. I'm quoting Dr. Bart Ehrman from his book Misquoting Jesus, page 10. This kind of realization coincided with the problems I was encountering the more closely I studied the surviving Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. It is one thing to say that the originals were inspired, but the reality is that we don't have the originals. So saying they were inspired doesn't help me much unless I can reconstruct the originals. Moreover, the vast majority of Christians for the entire history of the church have not had access to the originals, making their inspiration something of a moot point. Not only do we not have the originals, we don't have the first copies of the originals. We don't even have copies of the copies of the originals or copies of the originals. What we have are copies made later, much later. In most instances, they are copies made many centuries later, and these copies all differ from one another in many thousands of places. As we will see later in this book, these copies differ from one another in so many places that we don't even know how many differences there are. Possibly it is easiest to put it in comparative terms. There are more differences among our manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament. Isn't that something? Did you ever have a discussion with Christians or Jehovah's Witness or Catholic or whatever denomination they are from, and they told you they were very affirmative in claiming that they are originals for not only the Bible but the New Testament? Obviously, that is more recent than the Old Testament, what it's supposed to be. And we have a doctor who tells us that not only we don't have the originals, but we don't have the copies of the copies, and all the copies of the copies of the copies. And that there are more differences among our manuscripts that there are words in the New Testament. Isn't that something? Isn't that interesting? What is your thought? Did you know that? Have you ever shared that information? What was the feedback that you got? There's more coming. Trust me. Dwell on this and get back at me later. Take care for now.